We now have the 4 candidates running for Georgia governor. What will this election mean for the state, the country? The Monica Perez Show starts now. This is Monica Perez, your libertarian voice on News 95.5 and AM 750 WSB every Saturday, usually from 3 to 6. Today it's 4 to 6, but we're going to make the most of this 2 hours. We're going to pack it all in. There's lots and lots to talk about. I have had a very fun, interesting, productive, and valuable week here at WSB with the rest of the team working on the WSB Carathon, which was so interesting and fun and moving and did such good work for that program for children's cancer and blood disorders at Children's Hospital. It was really moving to finally get to broadcast from there. And hopefully we raise some good money. And I was there with Krista DiBiase and, of course, Dave Baker. And Krista's sitting in on the show right now.
Hello.
Hey, Krista. You do so much work for the Carathon.
I do nothing. I really don't. I just, I'm privileged to be there every year. I feel really lucky to be around those families and meet those kids that are just so strong. And then I help, of course, I work with Clark Howard and I help him do his show, and it was unreal this year. We've raised just a little over $1.6 million.
Whoa!
For this.
Wow!
And no overhead. Like that money goes directly to the Affleck Cancer and Blood Disorders Center there at Children's Healthcare. And you can still donate, though. You can still give to this wonderful cause in a couple ways. You can go to WSBradio.com through tomorrow, and Scott Slade will read the final grand total on Monday morning's news. And also you can round up your purchases at Kroger. So I'm going to make sure I do that tomorrow when I do my weekly grocery shopping. So thank you, Kroger, for that as well.
Well, I would love it if the tally went up during our show today for a couple of reasons. One, it's a great cause, of course. And I love giving libertarians an opportunity to demonstrate that, yes, we don't need the government to organize every bit of charity. When people are really in need, they'll do it. And what was interesting to me is that I went to the hospital to see what was going on, to see it for myself. And the one thing I went in, and as I was walking in with you, Krista, I said, like, the one thing I want to understand is how these kids show up after they've had pain and fear, and they have to go. Every person I talked to had treatments for like years. And how did they keep those kids going? And they told us about their counseling, their counselors, their therapies, their distraction therapies, music, pets. And the gal who was giving us the tour, Ashley, just happened to mention that all of that is 100% donor sponsored. That's not, that the insurance doesn't pay for that. The government doesn't pay for it.
Yep.
And that's when I realized that you really make the thing I thought was the most important was the thing that we're paying for. So right. I love that.
Voluntary giving, as you say.
Yes, I just loved it. And it was really moving experience. So please, if people want to give now, that would be great. I think that would be awesome. It's WSBradio.com, as easy as that. So, also this week, we know who's running for Georgia governor. And I guess we already knew that it was Stacey Abrams, and now the Republican candidate is Brian Kemp. There's also the independent Odom and the libertarian Ted Metz, which I have to say, if ever there's a race where you might be tempted by the lesser of two evils, we're going to talk a bit about what Stacey Abrams is kind of all about in her own words. I'm not going to misrepresent it. All I do is look at her resume. Binkley, my producer here, just listens to what she says and brings it to us. And as I was thinking about, this year I actually thought the most important thing, if I were to have a cause, if I were to engage in the system, believe in the system, give the system a last hope, it would be election integrity. Because I can say all I want that the mob should not have the right to vote away your objective rights. And we have a constitution for that. We have limitations for that. Our democratic process is really to get people in the position to just to execute that stuff, legislate it within the bounds of our objective rules. But there's no chance that that system, as it's designed, could work if the elections themselves have no integrity. So I thought if there's one thing we can do here on the ground, it's try to secure election integrity, and voterga.org does that. I've had Garland Favorito, who's one of the founders of that organization, on the show a lot, and he this year filed a criminal complaint against Brian Kemp for having very vulnerable election systems during 2016, and when those were under scrutiny, they wiped the servers. And there's just never been a good explanation for that. I think that, until there is a full investigation, you have to keep open the possibility that Kemp didn't do his job out of incompetence or worse. So we have to see that. I think this and other things are going to make Kemp quite vulnerable versus Stacey Abrams. And, he's not my guy because of that. But because of what I think Stacey Abrams is bringing, I feel if you look at her resume, which I've talked about before, she has, and we're going to talk about this in the context of some of the things that she said recently. So during the show, I'm going to kind of try to bring it out little by little. She has a resume that really screams globalism. It doesn't scream Georgia. She's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. She has internships that are very telling. A couple in particular that I haven't explored before came to my attention this week that I want to tell you about. And because of that, I look at this, she actually made a Freudian slip once that this is her path to the White House, not the governor's mansion. And I think it could even be beyond that she really has a world vision that may be very sincere in her way. We're going to find out what she professes to be her sincere political beliefs, just so you can decide whether that's what you want or not. But for me, I like the opposite of that. I want local control. I want to make sure that the people who we elect to secure our rights and protections are held accountable by us. We have access to them. And I think she really means the opposite. So for me, it's one of those things where it might be the one time that I can understand the lesser of two evils. But boy, this is not a fun choice to make. However, so as I was going down that road, I just opened Ted Metz's homepage, and the blurb under his libertarian candidate for governor is this: libertarians believe that respect for individual rights is the essential precondition for a free and prosperous world, that force and fraud must be banished from human relationships, and that only through freedom can peace and prosperity be realized. So I was tempted to think the lesser of two evils, but Metz had me at respect for individual rights. So I, unlike people who tell me that I shouldn't vote for who I want to vote for, I wouldn't presume to tell people to do to make the same conclusion I have made. I think you have to make your own conclusions. But I'm not sure, you have all the information. So we're going to bring out some of that information on this show. And I'm open to hearing what you guys have to say about the choices that you make when faced with kind of the lesser of two evils, or maybe you love these people and you want to make a case for them. I would make a case for Metz. I actually agree with what he's saying. Now, of course, you then have to dig in and say, will he actually deliver on that stuff? That's the next layer. But I'm going to, for this, so far in the race, I'm going to talk about what they're offering at face value. So we can talk about that, 404-872-0750 or 1-800-WSB-TALK. And so, Binkley, do you have, I don't want to start getting into the clips. Let's start rolling into some of that stuff afterwards. I don't really have time to get into the first kind of blockbuster about influencing Russian elections and Stacey Abrams. There's your tease for let's try to do that at the bottom of the hour. But in the meanwhile, do you have a strong opinion of what's the right thing to do here? Would you vote the lesser of two evils, or what's your gut?
I would not, because every propaganda book or study I've ever read talks about how the lesser of two evils tactic is used to put people into office. So I won't do it. I oppose both.
Wow. Okay. Well, I have to say, I gave it some thought, and I decided that until we truly demand that all candidates respect and uphold the Bill of Rights, respect the sovereignty of other nations, and I think this is more important even than budget hawks think it is, commit to ending government debt. I really feel like when it comes to this stuff, it's not like, oh, how are we ever going to pay it back? I feel like it's the root of the evil. It's not just money we owe. So I would say protect the Bill of Rights, respect the sovereignty of other nations, and commit to ending government debt. Unless I really think that those three things are going to be affected, I agree with you. I don't think the lesser of two evils is really going to change the direction that our secret but evil overlords are heading us into. So on that note, maybe the lines will light up, but that's okay because we've got lots of, we really just want to exchange ideas, but also I really want to dig into some of the clips that you picked up, Binkley, about this Abrams strategy and her philosophy. And I'm just dying to tell you about what I found out about how we try to influence Russian elections.
I can't wait.
I know. It's super exciting. 404-872-0750, 1-800-WSB-TALK. You can tweet at me at Monica Perez Show.
Monica Perez.
You always are so enlightening.
On News 95.5 and AM 750, WSB.
404-872-0750, 1-800-WSB-TALK are our numbers. We're kind of kicking off the official Georgia governor's race, and we are going to be doing it. We're going to talk about all the candidates over, until November. Thank goodness there's a libertarian candidate, but I understand why people don't want to take any chances. I think that this race is getting national scrutiny. I think they're affixing a lot of symbolism to Stacey Abrams, and I think she's exploiting that, trying to cultivate stereotypes, I guess. So here's a story she told that it may be true, but the governor's office responded, Zell Miller at the time, saying that they found it virtually impossible to believe. But let's hear her tell the story, and then we can kind of react to it. And then I'm going to tell you something new that you didn't know about Stacey Abrams in high school. So, Binkley, let's play that clip.
And I was a high school senior. I graduated as valedictorian. But my parents, who are incredible people, at the time they were graduate students at Emory University getting their Masters of Divinity, we didn't have a car. My family couldn't afford one. And so we relied on public transit. That day we took the public bus to the governor's mansion. We got off the bus and we walked up the driveway. All the other families were arriving by car. And the security guard looked at my parents, looked at me, and refused us entry. He told us we didn't belong. He didn't ask to see our invitation. He didn't check his checklist. Luckily, I have very aggressive parents who believe in their children and will always stand up for us. And so they had a very vigorous and engaged discussion with the guard, and he finally agreed to check the checklist and found my name on it. And the point of the story is I was allowed inside, but I don't remember meeting the governor of Georgia. I don't remember meeting my fellow valedictorians. What stuck with me from that day was this man standing in front of the most powerful place in Georgia telling me I didn't have the right to come inside because of who he saw when he looked at me, when he looked at that bus that my parents and I got off of.
So that's her story. Now, I think the chief of staff of Zell Miller, who recently died, said he just found it very hard to believe. Her name was first on the roster. There's a check mark next to it. I don't know if you could even see the bus stop from the governor's mansion. And for her to say that was like such a poignant memory, she had already entered the elite. I'm going to tell you right after the break what she brought to that meeting. This is Monica Perez.
Monica Perez.
I think you're a great libertarian voice on the radio.
On News 95.5 and AM 750, WSB.
I am your libertarian voice on WSB Saturdays from 3 to 6 normally. Today it's 4 to 6, but we're going to get a lot done in these 2 hours. 404-872-0750, 1-800-WSB Talk. You can tweet at me at Monica Perez Show if you want to chime in. We just played, so the governor's race is on. We know who's running for governor: Abrams, Kemp, Odom, and Metz. Metz is libertarian. Of course, I like libertarians. I am for what I am for. I'm not voting against what I'm against so much as if there's an opportunity to vote for somebody I believe in, I'm going to do it. So I don't presume to tell other people how to use their votes. But I'm open to whatever you want to say. And we can have a civilized discussion about it. But one thing that I think is important is to make sure people know the choice that they're actually making. So Stacey Abrams, to me, I'm not sure what you see is what you get. But if you scratch the surface a little bit and just look at her resume and what she said, I think you get a better picture than kind of the national media propaganda sound bites and memes that are going to flood the airwaves until November. So we just heard a clip of her talking about how when she was valedictorian of her high school in Georgia and she was invited to the governor's mansion with the other valedictorians, the guard did not want to let her and her family in because they got off a city bus and he didn't believe that her name could be on the list. Her name was the first name on the list. He would literally have to not even have looked at it. And Zell Miller's chief of staff was like really hurt because he said Zell did care about civil rights and that kind of thing, and nobody on his staff treated people that way, and it was like impossible to believe. So her campaign responded by saying, let's not quibble about whether, what the facts are here. We're talking about the deeper truth. So this goes to a little meme I invented. Facts are facts, but truth is truth.
Right. Very communist response from the Abrams campaign there.
Yes. And it came, that's Binkley, my producer, who also played for us the Starbucks clips, which is where I kind of was able to distill this theme, which is the guys at Starbucks who said that they were treated differently because they were black and weren't allowed to use the bathroom, even though they weren't buying anything. The whole story. But one of the things the guy said was, now that's a rule that I suppose is evenly applied. I don't know if I don't know. But they changed their bathroom policy at Starbucks. So I imagine they thought it was a bad rule overall. And what the guy said was, rules are rules, but right is right. And what you're saying there is that things are subjective, so that you can bypass the rules if you know in your heart that it's better.
Yeah, that's exactly how they justified telling the babies being ripped out of incubator stories going into the Gulf War, which wasn't true.
Right. They said it doesn't matter that it wasn't true. At least we're stopping the bad guys. Yeah. And my argument always goes back to if they're bad guys, there should be plenty of evidence. Like, you don't need to make anything up for that. And this subjectivism, do you have clip 1 super handy? It's just like a 6-second clip, and it really brings out the subjectivist viewpoint of, so my point is, rules are only good rules that have emerged through 10,000 years of civilization and a lot of smart people and experience and all that. So if you believe in rules, it's because they're universally applicable, and that's what rule of law means. But if you think that the rules should only be in the hands of certain people, like rules are rules, but right is right, you really can't. There's no predictability, and there's no universally applied justice. And this quick little clip is it Stacey saying it?
Yes.
Okay, let's hear it.
When redistricting is in the hands of those who have good intentions and have good hearts, things change.
So she doesn't like redistricting if her party isn't in power. You know what I mean? Like, that's why this doesn't, what they're saying really is that our system doesn't work at all and needs to be completely redone, which they actually say that. You know, they are getting to say that. Like, we need a system that we don't have to fight, is one of the clips that you have. And, which one is
that? Yeah, that was one of the Parkland students who was on Pod Save America recently, which is, Pod Save America is a podcast. It's run by a bunch of former Obama staffers and is now being propped up by HBO and is spread everywhere.
Yeah. Do you want to play that one about we need a system that we don't have to fight?
Yeah, it'll take a second to find it.
All right. So, but let me just button up the thing about her high school. It's she at that point. So I look at her resume. I just look at her resume and I investigate the things that are on it. And literally, when you look at her resume, nothing says I am just this unlikely grassroots candidate who really understands the plight of the impoverished and the druggy. It instead says to me, I was selected at a very young age to be groomed to be the face of the elite to the people so they don't see, like a beard. And one of the things she did, before that incident, where the only thing she can remember being at the governor's mansion is how she was oppressed, is that she is I just saw this on their Facebook page, a Telluride SP90. So that means that in 1990, she was in the Telluride Association summer program. And it's a 6-week educational experience for high school juniors that offers challenges and rewards rarely encountered in secondary school or even college. It has a rigorous selection process. And now I read elsewhere that it's by invitation only. So how her bus riding parents figured this out, I never even heard of it before. I mean, this is like tantamount to a secret. Taspers generally go on to America's finest colleges, which she did. Telluride Association hopes the TASP experience endows its students with a sense of intellectual vitality, blah, blah, blah. It's one of the most successful and prestigious academic summer programs in the nation. The more than 3,400 living TASP alumni include leaders in politics, journalism, academia, the sciences, education, medicine, business, and the arts. For many, the 6-week Telluride Association program was a formative experience in their lives. So before this happened, like she was already on the road. And then another internship I dug into. So after this, she went to Yale Law School. Was that her ultimate? Yeah. I forget what her undergrad was, but she went to Yale Law School.
Spelman, I think.
Maybe, yeah, sounds right. And then after, she's right now a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. She's a fellow of the British American Project. That's a good one. The British American Project. I think John Pilger said it was the foot soldiers in any network devoted to power and propaganda. That's what her thing was. The Salzburg Seminar, Freeman Fellow on U.S. East Asian Relations, on Youth and Civic Engagement, on she was a Council on Italy Fellow, an American Council of Young Political Leaders Fellow at the U.S. Department of State. She was an American Marshall Memorial Fellow. I believe that's like the Marshall Plan. Next Gen Fellow of the American Assembly at Columbia University on U.S. global policy and the future of international institutions. And she's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Yeah. I mean, she is preparing to be president of the world, not even just president of this country, which she's also preparing to do, because she did say on this road to the White House when she meant the governor's mansion. So do you want to play the thing about how we need a system that isn't about rights, but that we don't have to fight, that works with us? Is that worth playing?
Yeah.
All right, go for it.
We can't talk about voting as participating in this system. We have to talk about voting as being able to create a new system that fights for us instead of a system we have to fight. And I think that's the hardest thing right now to communicate to people, because we're incredibly divided as a nation. But if the young people of this country can come together, we have the technology, we have the education to come together and say, this is what we want to fight for, we can completely change what this country looks like. Because young people as a demographic, like, vote at the lowest rate. And if we raise, like, 5 points, 6 points, the youth turnout, completely control the election as young people.
That's right.
See, this upsets me because it's like when I hear them, I'm not like this, like, democracy, right or wrong. I don't think like that. But our system is set up to have protections for minorities, like the minority political opinion, minority regional, like that's what the Electoral College is about. That's why the Senate has the same number of people from each state. That's why you have states' rights. That's what all that stuff is. So when they're talking about we don't want a system, we have to fight, they're talking about negotiation, compromise, and the only compromise that really works is the compromise where you leave each other alone. And nobody's going to compromise and say, okay, I'll give you everything. So, the compromise is, you know what, I'm not going to take your pot away, but you're going to have to buy it yourself. Like, that's a compromise everyone can live with,
Yeah. And what that kid is saying, that's one of the Parkland school shooting survivors. That's one of the David Hoggs that goes around, propagating disinfo all the time. He,
just think about your own teenager, and is that really
right?
Is that an unschool?
He's promoting subversion.
Yeah, an overthrow of the system.
Yeah.
I know. Look, if he was talking about overthrowing the system and restoring individual rights, like a de facto institution of the Bill of Rights, like protecting Bill of Rights, but what's going on now is stripping away those rights. So this is the same body of people who don't like the Sixth Amendment because they give people the right to trial who don't deserve it. Like that's not that's not okay. So like the Parkland guy, that was a big theme around that. Like, should we be paying for his lawyer? It's like, well, who, like the Parkland shooter. It's like, well, you don't really know, even if he did it, until you have the trial. Like, you think but that means you just believe the media. So, but let's take a break. But then I'll tell you that the internship that Stacey Abrams did that I thought was like so on point with the whole Russian collusion meme. You're really not going to believe it when I peeled the onion on this one. 404-872-0750, 1-800-WSB-TALK. This is Monica Perez.
Monica Perez.
29 years of service in the Army as a professional intelligence officer. I sincerely appreciate your program.
On News 95.5 and AM 750, WSB.
We are back. Trying to give some insights into Stacey Abrams, the person, and the policies. And I was just talking about some of her internships. I hadn't known about her high school internship, which it's like very low profile, but it is actually stating expressly that it is grooming people to interface with the elites or become the elite later. And that was one thing. So she got a very early start. There's lots of people I've noticed, Sergey Brin, Mark Zuckerberg, George Soros, who were have story, James Comey, Fidel Castro, who have stories from their teen years that put them somehow in the limelight, in on a path to where they are today. Very interesting. I don't know what to make of it exactly, but when I see it, it kind of makes me do a double take. But it's one of her later internships that really blew my mind when I realized the implications of it. She was a UCOS fellow for U.S.-Russia relations. And UCOS oil, if you remember it, it existed, I believe, from 1993 to 2007. The guy who owned it, Khodorkovsky, his name was, I think, they shut him down. First of all, the way they got rich there, these oligarchs emerged in Russia is exactly the way this guy did. He owned a bank. The bank was given the right to auction off the state companies when Russia started to privatize stuff. And in almost every case, the bank itself won the bid. So the thing was worth $20 billion, and this guy got it through his bank for, I think, $150 million. So it was just absolute theft, and Putin kind of was pulling back on that. And this, I think, it's hard to find the information on it, but I did see references that it was largely Western held, and it went bankrupt in 2007. So her internship there had to have been before 2007. And during that time, they had a program, I think it was called the Open Russia program. I've been doing all this stuff on the Wayback Machine, and it's hard to navigate. But there were 5 board members. One was Henry Kissinger. Another was Lord Jacob Rothschild.
Wow.
So I don't know if that was the program she was involved in, but I can't find any information on that. But I can find information on another similar program of theirs called the New Civilization, where UCOS inaugurated a youth education project where hundreds of thousands of young Russian citizens took part in various New Civilization programs, including a democracy role-playing game, regional and interregional summer camps and festivals. New Civilization participant schools each became an independent children's republic who established economic, political, cultural, and educational relations with the countries and neighboring schools. So as I've been looking into, Russian hacking and this Yukos oil thing, I realized that we have had a multi-decade plan to really influence the body politic in Russia. And I know, Binkley, you have something to say about that. So let's get to it after the break. And I believe you actually have literal fun and games for me. So we're going to get to that in a second. 404-872-0750, 1-800-WSB-TALK. You can tweet at me at Monica Perez Show.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to be. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This is Monica Perez, your libertarian voice on News 95.5 and AM 750 WSB every Saturday from 3 to 6. You wouldn't know it, but we started at 4 today. That's okay. Anything you miss, you can always get at propagandareportdaily.com, where you can get WSB very generously gives us these shows without commercials, which we post, and we also do podcasts. So if you've got the Jones or you missed something, plug into that, propagandareportdaily.com. And what we're talking about today is a lot of times we do stuff of national or even international significance, and we also try to do local stuff. This is kind of both. As hey, maybe Binkley, you can, my producer Binkley here, can find that clip. I'm sorry I don't have these on my at the tip of my finger, telling us that how important this is to the nation. It's clip 23. So this is why the Georgia governor's race between Abrams, Kemp, Odom, and Metz. Don't forget Metz, he's the libertarian, and he seems like a good guy. So we're going to dig into that. Maybe we'll get him on the show.
Yeah.
But let's hear Stacey Abrams saying what this is really about.
The more we have an external narrative, people across this country talking about why this election matters, why Georgia matters. Because here's the thing. We have the busiest airport in the world, 3rd largest port on the East Coast. We, after LA, are one of the top locations for filming. We are a state of more than 10.5 million people, the 9th largest economy, and the governor of Georgia is responsible for signing the gerrymandering maps, the redistricting maps in 2020. So if you don't want the maps to be gerrymandered, then make certain that she is elected to either sign or veto those maps. And just to put this in context, Georgia has 14 legislative districts. We are likely to pick up another one. We have 16 electoral votes. Georgia winning, me winning Georgia, changes America. That's why you should care.
Yep, that's why you should care.
Because when good people with good hearts have control of redistricting.
Oh, yeah. Can you play clip 1? Because it's not about... It's so funny. The rules only work when they're in the hands of a benevolent dictator, apparently. Go.
When redistricting is in the hands of those who have good intentions and have good hearts, things change.
I mean, if that's what you're depending on, then government is truly terrifying and needs to have no power at all, which is kind of where I always end up.
It's worth noting that she was speaking to a crowd in San Francisco during that longer clip.
Oh, yes. And do you have the part where she says what it's really about, like the 3 Gs?
Let me see.
Because she is talking to the San Francisco Commonwealth Club, which I'm not sure it was the Commonwealth Club or someplace else in San Francisco that Obama said something similar Anyway, we'll get to that. But I wanted to wrap up what I was talking about before the break was that so she just told you Atlanta is the biggest one of the biggest. I think it's the busiest airport in the country or whatever, but it's like significant in the world as an airport. It's the Atlanta location. If you read stuff like Kasim Reed got Atlanta really plugged in with the UN. It was on the steering committee of like the 25 strong cities in the world. And you can see when they say, well, if Trump will pull us out of the environmental accord, we'll just join it as cities. There's something world government, directional, whatever, going towards world government. And Atlanta's a big part of that. I think it's just got diversity. It's got geographic north, south, east, west, and centrism. And then Binkley was telling me that, didn't the Georgia Guidestones? I said, like, Atlanta's the center of the world if you look at it that way. It's like it's like the center of gravity for the land masses of the world. And you said...
I believe Native Americans say that the Georgia Guidestones is on the center of the world.
Yeah, like, I think there's some significance there. And I really think she's running for president of the world. And what's funny is that... Well, so what I was talking about before the break is that she did this Yukos Oil Fellowship for U.S.-Russian relations. But as I dug into what Yukos Oil was all about, I discovered that they had very significant operations to influence the body politic in Russia. And they didn't hide it. And it was the thing that Kissinger and Rothschild were in charge of, Jacob Rothschild and Henry Kissinger of Yukos Oil. I can't even find that in the Wayback Machine. That's like cached, 404 on the Wayback Machine. And it took me forever to even get what I got. But they were literally trying to reach hundreds of thousands and were reaching of Russian children and teaching them about Western-style capitalism and democracy, which I wouldn't even care about. But that's not what they were engaging in. If you know what Clinton and Yeltsin did to Russia, they did the worst stereotypical untrue thing. Like capitalism is, you use money to invest in the future. This is we use our financial prowess to steal everything. It's like your typical communist view of what capitalism is what they were actually doing. And they were doing it on behalf so a lot of Western interests were involved. And you were saying, Binkley, that's what you played us some clips that kind of pointed to exactly that, right? Can you tell me remind us?
That's what the Chatham House, the Royal Institute of International Affairs,
is a British
think tank.
Right.
And a man named Andrew Wood, who is responsible for giving the Steele dossier, the dirty dossier, to John McCain.
To undermine Trump.
Yes. They have been talking about basically destabilizing Russia and funding protesters, funding an uprising to try and get Putin out of power since at least 2008.
Yeah, they talk about specifically changing the minds of the people to undermine the government. And actually, and Chatham House is the sister of the Council of Foreign Relations, like literally the sister. The Royal Institute of International Affairs founded the Council of Foreign Relations, and that it changed its name to Chatham House, but the Council of Foreign Relations, which Stacey Abrams is a member of.
Right.
And then she had this internship at Yukos Oil. But as I was digging into this stuff and looking at all these protesters, so Putin put the guy in jail who was running it, who was an absolute criminal. He got ill-gotten gains to own it in the first place. That's what he should have gone to jail for. He went to jail for tax fraud or whatever. But when I was digging into this, I found a reference to this McFaul guy, the Stanford professor. People are like, you can't hand McFaul over to Putin, which I don't think that's what he asked. I think he was asking to do it according to a treaty, which is his guys get to witness us asking him questions about what he was doing.
He wasn't going to nail him to a tree?
Right, and skin him in the Moscow Red Square. So I'm looking and I see McFaul's name pop up, and they go through... And he starts writing articles about this in 2003, McFaul does, about how Russia could go kind of internal or external. It could be like a great energy partner for the West or whatever. And we think Putin is definitely our guy. We can do this. Well, that was 2003. He wrote that. fast forward to 2011, 2012, Obama makes him the ambassador to Russia. And there's this YouTube video, which is in Russian, so I can't really understand it. But it's called, the subtitle of the title of it is Receiving Orders. And what it is McFaul shows up at the U.S. Embassy in Russia to take his position as ambassador. And the media ambush a bunch of people walking in. And the people walking in are the leaders of the 5 protest groups against Putin. So sure, maybe they reach out for help to the outside, but by the looks of what these guys are up to, from the Chatham House to the Yukos oil thing to Kissinger to Rothschild, it's more likely that they create these organizations. They act like it's 5 different organizations, but they're explicitly, they're stating we are trying to influence the political process in Russia, and we are telling these protesters or these leaders we're giving them their marching orders. And hey, you can even say that's great because we're great and they're bad, whatever. But we clearly, our government and, Kissinger supposedly is still head of the security state, according to subsequent national security directors. Who knows what Rothschild's up to over in England, that they are really deliberately trying to influence the body politic in Russia to this day.
So Stacey Abrams seems to have been groomed by these people that are influencing the Russian. For
international work. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Every one of her internships relates to a different region of the world. So I think that she's being groomed for something bigger, and that the Georgia governorship is a stepping stone for that. And then she talks about using it as an example or as a lever to change the nation. So that's, yep. I don't think the voters in Georgia, maybe the voters in California like that, or New York, but I don't think the voters in Georgia want that. Even the people she's saying she's reaching, because her goal, these people is Anglo-American oil. That's who's there. That's what they're doing.
She gets more money from old rich white people than one of Trump's golf clubs. And she's telling people she's a grassroots candidate who speaks for the voice of people who've been forgotten in low-income communities.
Well, because you've identified her funding from Soros. So
yeah.
But we've done that before. I'm trying to just do new stuff, which this stuff keeps coming up, and I'm just going to keep telling you what I come up with. So, and I'm absolutely open to dialogue. 404-872-0750, 1-800-WSB-TALK, or you can tweet at me. Let's read some tweets after the break at Monica Perez Show.
Monica Perez.
That was phenomenal.
On News 95.5 and AM 750, WSB.
I'm back, and I have a prize pack. A pair of tickets to Lost 80s Live. This is so speaking my language. On Sunday, August 5th at State Bank Amphitheater at Chastain Park. Enjoy an 80s night of music featuring A Flock of Seagulls, Naked Eyes, Wang Chung, Berlin, the original members of When in Rome, UK, Farrington and Mann, Animotion, and New Shoes. It's part of the Delta concert series. I gotta say, I know. That's right up my alley. It's so upbeat. Tickets are on sale now at livenation.com, but you can get a pair of tickets free if you are first to call 404-741-0750. And I could have offered this game up to the callers, but I'll just be first to call. And Binkley, I'm ready for your game. Are you ready to play your game?
I am ready.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready, but you think I'm going to do well.
I think you'll do well.
I'm a little worried. I get nervous about stuff like that.
Well, let's see. I now challenge people listening to play at home. I'm going to play a clip. You tell me what the flawed logic in the clip is.
Had probable cause, with judges agreed with them, that Carter Page was leading an effort to collude with the foreign government, who we know now, because they've been indicted for this, sabotaged our election.
That, if you ever wanted to trigger me, an indictment is not evidence. This is why they actually have a cliche that you could indict a ham sandwich. Where do you think that comes from?
Right.
Oh my gosh, I have to encourage people to listen. Was it last week's WSB show where we just beat to death the Chris Wallace, like trying to shove the indictment in Putin's face?
Yeah.
Only because he's like, there's the evidence right here. These squiggles on I just wrote it down in crayon in the other room. Like, they did it.
It's proof.
It's proof right there. And then in the Journal that day, it had said, after the Chris Wallace interview, our plan was for Trump to shove the indictment in Putin's face. But he didn't do it, which I thought was rather statesmanlike of him. But of course, I guess that's reason for impeachment, to be statesmanlike.
Right. Everybody praises Chris Wallace.
Right. And
Give
it
me a
was
break.
just so pathetic. If you could have a half an hour with Putin, would you do the talking? Right. I wouldn't do the talking. I wouldn't do the shoving. Anyway, you've got some blockbuster stuff, I know, that hopefully it doesn't trigger me too much, but maybe it'll trigger y'all. Stay tuned. 404-872-0750, 1-800-WSB Talk. You can tweet at me at Monica Perez Show.
Monica Perez on News 95.5 and AM 750 WSB.
We are back. I am the Libertarian Voice on News 95.5 and AM 750 WSB. Saturdays from 3 to 6 in the home stretch. And actually, we have off next weekend. It's Fan Day. UGA Fan Day, if I'm not mistaken. And but back the next week, 3 to 6, August 11th. But if you really need to hear a little Perez and Binkley, go to propagandareportdaily.com and you can get this show, all the WSB shows, plus our podcast and some good articles. And also MonicaPerezShow.com has an archive of like libertarian on point articles if you're interested. But Binkley played a little game with me if I could spot the flaw in this clip. And I wanted to replay that clip because it reminded me of another clip he played for me that totally triggered me earlier in the day. So let me hear the game, which is real short, and then we'll play the other thing too. Let's hear it.
The FBI had probable cause, with judges agreed with them, that Carter Page was leading an effort to collude with the foreign government, who we know now, because they've been indicted for this, sabotaged our election.
Former Obama staffer.
Wow. That's really bad to do that, to say that. Because when I say that there's an attack, actually this goes full circle to what we started out with, and I wasn't even putting that together. To suggest that an indictment, that a government accusation that is virtually impossible to not get, except for in the case of the police shooting of William Powell, that guy was not indicted, you can basically indict a ham sandwich. And if that's what this guy is saying, what he's really doing is denying us the Sixth Amendment right.
Lock that ham sandwich up.
Right. It's over. Case dismissed. And that's very dangerous. So when these guys are saying we need to get young people to vote, not to participate in the system, but to totally change the system, it doesn't sound like the Sixth Amendment is something that would survive their new system. But the fact that this audience, so this is Pod Save America, and it gets millions of listeners?
Yeah, right after Obama, not right after Obama, right after Trump was elected, they started a podcast, and they promoted it as grassroots. Yeah, they're just like Stacey Abrams. They have a bunch of these powerful people who are they're in their pocket, and they instantly got like millions of views, and then HBO picked them up, and now they're doing a national tour spreading propaganda.
Wow. Well, they people who don't know that an indictment is not evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, that shows a level of ignorance that is fatal to our system. I'm not a huge democracy fan, but to the extent the system works, that is important.
Their target audience is young people.
Yeah, they're trying to get pre-knowledge voters.
Yeah.
So that's I can't remember exactly what the clip was, but you played me a clip that I was just like, huh? So is that relevant to this about the
Stoneman Douglas kid talking about how smart he is? Yeah. Indoctrination.
Yeah, the one I wanted you to cut up, but you said no.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, this is Cameron
35. Clip 35.
Okay, clip 35. These are some of the survivors of the Parkland shooting.
It's about creating an educated voting force, especially with young people, because when we're talking about what has perpetuated this system, it's because the people that vote are these old people that aren't as educated as the younger people when discussing these situations and this policy. But I mean, it's a lot of it is just the misconceptions and the lack of ability to actually combat these terrible arguments. Like, I've been in meetings with over 200 representatives, and most of the people against us are absolutely wrong in what they're actually claiming at me. And they misquote the Constitution and they say policy incorrectly.
That's why educating the youth is so important. Surprisingly enough, the older people in this country who will tell you that our insight doesn't matter because we haven't seen this much are the easiest to manipulate.
So he's saying that Trump voters are stupid, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the kids who was just as prominent as David Hogg in that whole movement.
Okay, so a few things actually caught my attention about that clip. One is that they say that people misquote the Constitution, which is straight out of your propagandist-in-chief, Lakoff, is saying when they quote the Constitution, you tell them they don't understand the Constitution. Right. So that's a talking point. And what the guy said in that clip right there was that older people are not as educated as younger people to talk about these issues. And what I know what they mean because of something I got in the email today. You can say whatever you want right now, Binkley.
Oh, I'm interested to hear, yeah.
So what they're really saying is they haven't been, older people aren't ready with the sound bites, ready with, so it's just like the Stacey Abrams clips that you're saying, where they're saying, she's saying, you have to just tell them what to say or what to do, that you have to get those connections. That's what Lakoff is saying, and all that kind of stuff. So I told you a while ago that I don't know how I signed up for these emails. It wasn't like research or anything. I just ended up on the Quora mailing list, Quora. So when I was doing research on Zuckerberg to figure out where this guy came from, and I discovered that he was, and I think the Stacey Abrams thing was probably similar in a way of identifying teenagers, but he and Sergey Brin and Lady Gaga and this guy, I think his name is D'Angelo, were in this John Hopkins teen program for insanely gifted youth, like kids who get 100 on the SAT at the age of 12, like crazy stuff like that, really out there, phenomenal. And they weren't there to be targeted like Stacey Abrams, her high school program was there to mold the kids. This program was there to study geniuses, right? So, and they were there for 4 years. So Zuckerberg and this other kid, I think it's D'Angelo, were buddies, and they both transferred to Exeter, Phillips Exeter, the #1 high school in the country, I would say by reputation, if not rankings. They transferred as juniors to this high school. Like, you transfer as a junior, you save a lot of time and money to get the golden ticket, you know? And Zuckerberg went on to, he had been like a languages and psych major, not a computer science major, but he went on to establish Facebook the day that the Pentagon's LifeLog folded. LifeLog was the Pentagon's Facebook, which didn't take off, and then Zuckerberg's Facebook replaced it on the same day, whatevs. And then, but his buddy went on to found Quora, Quora. And I noticed, I looked at it, I keep getting these emails, I'm like, oh, Binkley, this is a talking points machine. So what it is they send you a thing like, I'll just give you this example, which I got in the mail today. It says, so it's like Q&A. They have professional or like crowdsourced answers. So it's like a popular question and then a crowdsourced answer. And somehow some of them get sent into your email. This is, what exactly is Donald Trump's IQ? I am betting that in reality, he does not rank as the genius he claims to be. Who can clarify? Cheryl Johns, a realtor, she got 682 upvotes for this and 8,000 views. I don't see any downvotes. Anyway, so I'm sure there are, but this is what
you get banned if you give it a downvote.
Well, but I mean, this is the excuse for why hers is the answer that rises to the top. Here's her answer. According to Tony Schwartz, the real author of Art of the Deal, Trump, spelled small t, capital R, rump, on purpose, she notes, has a vocabulary of about 700 words. So far less than my son who has Down syndrome. Just that's my little footnote. Listening to him repeat the same words over and over, I would say that's about right. Thank you, Cheryl. Coco the gorilla could sign and had a vocabulary of over 2,000 words. In short, a gorilla had a vocabulary of almost 3 times that of the current occupant of the White House. So either Coco, who just died and is a far better creature than the orange one, is a super, super genius, or the great orange one is really stupid. You pick.
Well,
So this is what I'm getting from the Quora guy. This is how they're educating young people to have answers.
It's unbelievable.
So now the person walks away and says, the people who read this, which I'm sure is young people, walk away and say, Trump only has a vocabulary of 700.
And he's like Coco the monkey, except meaner.
Right. And she just pulled this out of her orifice, and there it is.
What does that say about everybody else if this monkey, this orange orangutan, he can only speak 700 words, colluded with Russia and duped everybody? What does that say about everybody else's intelligence if he's that dumb?
Yes, right. That's why it's not okay to call Hitler crazy, because you're not, you don't dupe the world, you don't kill. I mean, it's quite an insult to you,
right,
if you nearly get eradicated as somebody who can't even string 2 thoughts together.
Yeah, Trump is a lot of things.
It's not okay.
Yeah, but he's not dumb. He's smart.
I have to say, I really enjoyed that montage you sent me of Joan Rivers saying a lot of things that were funny. Why don't you should tweet that.
Okay.
His Twitter is @FreedomAxRadio.
Oh, the one where she said that Trump would be a good president?
Yeah, she said he's super smart. He would be a really good president. He just gets things done, whatever. And then, she was dead not too long after that. But I do wonder about her, because when you sent me that stuff, I realized she really did speak truth to power. And then she walked off the set of CNN during a live interview because the lady was making fun of her fur coat, and she was making fun of the lady's leather shoes, and the anchor woman would not back off, and she just said, I've had enough. And then I was like, I said, we'll never hear from her again, and then she died.
That's crazy. It's like Ron Paul. They bring these people on there under a pretense, and then they ambush them with stupid questions about...
Yeah, but the really good ones, the people who are sincere, and that's why I think she was sincere, and Ron Paul, is that they can respond because they've thought of stuff. Hold on. Let's take a quick call. I've got 1 minute. Jack in Woodstock, I have about a minute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Monica. Thank you. Yeah, I wish you were on prime time, because people need to hear what you're saying, because you're spot on, and you have been, and everybody just poo-poos it, and I don't know why. We've been so... Kids don't get taught anything in school anymore, so whatever they hear on the news, that's it. And that's what they live by, and their parents don't reinforce anything, so we're stuck in the middle here.
And it's so full of lies, the news. I can debunk it. And I mean, there's stuff on the news that the news itself reported as wrong previously. There's been stuff this week.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate what you're doing, though. And is this stuff on your website? Because people
Binkley,
really need...
Yeah, we really want to spread just the truth about Stacey Abrams. And if this is what people want, have at it. But this is not being advertised. So please tell people where you'll put it.
I'll put these clips up on the website this weekend, or in the next couple of days.
This is not being advertised, so please tell... Sorry, sweetie. What? Yeah, what? Where is it going to be? Tell people.
PropagandaReportDaily.com.
And are you going to put that in the show notes of this when it's podcasted?
I'm going to go ahead and put these clips on the internet this weekend, and then I'll add the show later.
Okay, so give him 24 hours. He'll put all this stuff on PropagandaReportDaily.com. And then in a few days, when WSB uploads this show commercial-free, we'll put that also on PropagandaReportDaily.com. And we have some other podcasts and stuff of Stacey Abrams. So in the post Binkley's going to put up tomorrow, it'll have all of our previous research. And Kemp is no great shakes either. We have some of that stuff, too. You gotta make your own decision about that. Ted Metz sounds like a great guy. I'd love to hear him and his response to what happens when you have a true dilemma. There's stuff to think about here. Let's wrap it up after the break, or you could tweet at me at Monica Perez Show.
Monica Perez.
I'm not interested in fantasies. I'm interested in reality.
On News 95.5 and AM 750, WSB.
Wrapping it up here, the Monica Perez Show. And we didn't read any tweets the whole show. So, Binkley, give me a tweet.
All right, I have one from Franny who tweets, "Hey, your mother finds those kids claiming that old people who support Trump are not well informed and don't know the Constitution is insulting, period, and untrue, exclamation point."
My mom is a true Trump supporter, very loyal, well-educated, followed politics her whole life, knew Donald Trump, did not approve, knew, not personally, but in New York, did not approve of the way he treated women, but nobody's perfect, and she likes him, and she likes him for reasons.
I would have liked to have heard her call in.
I know, but I think that's too much to ask. But they were all sitting around listening to it. My son is visiting her, and he was just got back from survival camp, and he texted. I guess they're making him listen to it, but he likes it. He said, "I just remembered, we're all listening to your show. I mentioned you at survival camp, and one of our counselors said he loves you, and I just thought you'd like to know that, Mom."
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I guess I'm getting the demographic I'm going for. Those are the people who are going to save us. So thank you very much. Not here next week, here the week after. If you want to hear the show on podcast, go to propagandareportdaily.com. Thank you, everybody. Rachel, Krista Binkley, and we'll see you next time. This is Monica Perez.